Wagon Decan, second Decan Aquarius, approximately January 31st to February 8th. The descriptor in the Hindu image from 500 CE is a female decan with fire ruled by Mercury. It is a danger decan. Now, I don't know how much danger it is. I don't know if that translation is correctly understood. I don't subscribe to it particularly, but I keep it there because that was the translation. But I don't think it's danger. It's more of in the overview of all the decans, there's 4 that are listed as, I sometimes call them warning decans. These are decans that are separate from the other 32. So they're always listed at the end. This one is 32 in the order of occurrence, happening in February, but it's separate with the other 4 listed at the end in every system except the Hindu. They list them in order of occurrence, but they note that these are separate. Each one of the 4 are labeled, but every other system lists them at the end. They go through all 32, and then they list these particular 4 at the end in various orders. Now, this one is a female, making it the only female warning or danger decan. And further, the descriptor says, in a burning wagon made of Somalia wood, whatever that is, a woman dressed in dirty clothes with pots on her head is gathering iron in the forest. I thought that's pretty peculiar for 500 CE. But there it is. We'll stick with the geometry, the basic descriptor, and see what else we find. Now, these are the 2 decans on either side of it. The first decan of Aquarius is vulture, and here you see the more common imagery, although we don't often see that it's a vulture. We just know there's some guy pouring water out into but not exactly a very good descriptor of the guy just pouring water out, because as you can see, there's movement, there's a lot of movement, but in the middle is this wagon. It's the Industrial Revolution, right? So water is not as noticeable. It's a much more difficult decan to get examples for, but wagon, let's see where we go here. Now, this gets into the processional order of the age, and this is why I'm doing wagon second, because we're going to show what time it is and my opinion of what time it is in this processional age. In the processional age, we would go through water decan first, then we would go through wagon, and then we would go through vulture, which would be the first part of Aquarius. But water is when, my opinion, when all the ships cross the ocean. This is all the offering containers. This is the religion ramping up, and then the spread, and then the resulting industrial revolution. And so what I'm proposing, my opinion, and I think I've got a lot of evidence to back it up, is right now where we sit in 2020, we're just fading out of this industrial revolution that is wagon decan, and we're moving into vulture. So my opinion, we've been in Aquarius for probably close to 13, 14, maybe 1,500 years, somewhere around in there. That's my opinion. This is the image from Hokusei's 36 Views of Mount Fuji. Number 34 is Wagon Decan. And it is a woman directing industry. We've got asses and elbows. And, that's a lot of movement. There's a lot of building going on. Everybody's working. There's smoke. And I like how they showed two different kinds of smoke, and none of it coming from Mount Fuji. This is just smoke of industry. You've got some black smoke, you've got white smoke, you've got gray smoke. It's industry and building. This doesn't happen all the time in history. This is an explosion of industry led by feminine energy that requires a lot of stuff. The I Ching descriptor for this one, which is also number 34 in the order of the decans, number 54 in the order of the I Ching, the first 20 being the 20 days. I call it number 34. I don't like the way they have it numbered in the Roman numeral system. Always very careful about the Roman integration of this stuff, but either way, there it is. And there's no mistaking that this is Wagon Decan, because very seldom in the I Ching do they talk about women at all. When they mention women, you gotta definitely pay attention, but this one just keeps going on and on and on about the younger sister in a position ancillary to the real wife. It talks about she's blind in one eye but able to see. That's interesting symbolism. This usually means that you're focused, I would think. It's a fair assumption. There will be advantage in maintaining the fair correctness of a solitary widow. And that's very explicit, specific language. The next one is the younger sister who was to be married off. In a mean position, she returns and accepts an ancillary position. So we're talking about remarks regarding a woman who's married off, but it doesn't really work out or something, and she returns. Line number 6, and I'm not including them all. You can go to the I Ching. I highly suggest the leg translation on Sacred Text Archives. I think that's a pretty good translation. Number 6 shows the young lady bearing the basket, but without anything in it, and the gentleman slaughtering the sheep, but without blood flowing from it. There will be no advantage. And I think what they're saying here is there's no work getting done. But in the other positions where we've got her in the widow, or she's married off and she returns, this is working out. So this is what we got. I don't know. We'll see. We'll look at the examples, and that's how I do it. This is Gun Park High. She was the president of South Korea, born in Wagon Decan. When she took the job, she was not married. She had no children. Here she is greeting the president of Brazil. I think it's obvious that both ladies are happy to be in friendly company there. Park Geun-hye is born February 2nd. She is the 11th and current, or no, she's not the current president of South Korea. This was text I took previously. She's the first woman to be elected as president in South Korea. Also the first woman head of state in modern history of Northeast Asia. She is unmarried with no children. Now, I use her as kind of a marker that where we're coming to the end of the age of the Industrial Revolution, because she is in a hugely industrious country But the revolution of it, the main industry has been, for the most part, completed. So just keep that in mind. That's where I hold her. She came in at the end. It didn't work out for her. They went after her and got her out of there for whatever reason. I don't get into any of that, but I just noticed that they got her out of there. And I don't like the way they're treating her. I don't know what she did or what they're. But either way, they got her out of there, and it's curious to me that her function as a leader of industry is, it's kind of winding down. Isabel Perón, born February 4th, Wagon, Decan, President of Argentina. She holds the distinction of being the first female president of any country in the world. She served as a widow with no children. Initially, she was the live-in cohort of the president, but here comes the church, and you got to get married and all this. But either way, she served as a widow with no children, and pretty powerful woman. Thought this was an interesting image because that's the way I see it in the 4 warning decans, or the 4 danger decans, whatever you want to call them. She's with 3 other men. They're all leaders, and she's got her place there. One guy looks happy about it. The other 2 are just a little, I don't know, kind of looks like maybe there's something, maybe, what's going on with the other 2 guys? They look a little upset or uncomfortable. At the beginning of the age, or well before the beginning of the age, we have Empress Matilda, February 7th, Wagon, Decan, first woman to rule England. She did not have children. Oh, she did. She did have children. She didn't have children while she was married to Henry the Fifth. She became the Empress of Rome. She was a bit ahead of her time. So either way, there's the basket. There's the little container. I don't know who did this painting, but it's a compelling image. Matches with the Decan image and matches with the spirit of the Decan. It's when it reaches its apex, that's what's going on. Her father and her brother died, leaving her as the heir. So there's that. Keep that in mind for later too, is the inheritance, the female inheritance. It's unheard of at that time. When she was married to Henry V, they did not have any children, and she became a widow. So there's 3 widows with no children, right, that are leading these countries. Henry I nominated her as his heir and making his court swear allegiance to her. So that's what happened. You don't need to get any further into it. That's what happened. And that's the day she was born. So pretty interesting. FDR was born January 30th. That's on the cusp. It's one day outside, but one day, like I say, one day that he squeezes in, especially with this symbolism. That's a match right there. I mean, this guy was forced to sit down. He had to sit down, and if you are leading an industrial revolution, it probably is best, if you're doing something as big as he was, it's probably actually better if you're sitting down. So he was a very interesting guy, very good leader. I'm not going to judge on politics and war and all that. I didn't like any of that stuff, but he got the farmers going. He got everything going. He inherited a mess. He was the 32nd president of the U.S., which I thought was it's just a nominal little, coincidence, but 32 Wagon is the 32nd decan in the order of occurrence. But either way, he served from 33 to 45. He was elected to his fourth term. He would have served 16 years. But I think he really enjoyed meeting and talking to people and getting them together. It was a mess coming out of the Great Depression. But I like this quote on his memorial where they used the cloak to cover up the wheelchair. I don't want to take away from I don't want to make him look weak or something, I don't know, but those who seek to establish systems of government based on the regimentation of all human beings by a handful of individual rulers call this a new order. It is not new, and it is not order. This guy knew about organization. This is an organizational, busy, productive energy, and he led the Industrial Revolution. Dmitri Mendeleev, that's organizational energy being brought to everlasting product of craziness. He did the periodic table, born February 8th. I always like to remind people that Dmitri Mendeleev didn't work in a lab for 20 years and finally came up with the periodic table. He got it in a dream. And when he woke up, he wrote it all down. And later, when he checked it, he only had to make one or two minor corrections. So that's how he got the periodic table. Getting into the Wagon aspect of this energy, aside from the symbolic organizational aspect, keeping things moving, this guy, he was an inventor, bicycle, early automobile manufacturer, T.B. Jeffrey, born February 5th. He's got a patent. He's got a Rambler. Keep that in mind. Rambler. We call it rambling around. Maybe that's where the statement came. I don't know. Maybe it was before that, but rambling around. Everybody gets to ramble around when we all get little cars. All the little humans get to have their own little cars, and they go zipping and zooming all over the place. John Boyd Dunlop, born February 5th. That's his first pneumatic tire. Now, there is some controversy. There was a previously filed patent some years prior, but he filed his, and the name stuck. He was famous for it. Dunlop brand persevered. I think Goodyear owns it now, but they keep the brand. But that's his pneumatic tire in the National Museum of Scotland. I think that's very interesting. I think this guy probably had a lot of good ideas, and the tire was one of them. But there it is. John Boyd Dunlop. The most famous wagon in the United States is the 20 Mule Team wagon. I mean, this is a crazy example, because if you asked anybody to name a famous wagon, like a single wagon, right, that had a name, nobody, some people say, well, the Conestoga wagon, which really was a design style, and there wasn't like a single wagon or anything like that. We had these covered wagons, and I don't know, I didn't dig too hard, but I didn't find anything with that, because it's really just a natural style for building wagons that you're going to haul people with. It's probably been around for eons in a lot of different countries. So, but this wagon, it has a name, and it has a singular purpose, and it was built by a single guy. Well, I mean, it was, owned by a single guy. Francis Marion Smith, born February 2nd. That's his wagon. The 20 Mule Team wagon. It had 20 mules. And it hauled borax out of Death Valley. So when we go back and look at these little particulars in the Decan, it says fire. It's a female Decan with fire. And Death Valley is the hottest place in the United States. And that is the most famous wagon in the United States. So, looking at our history and the examples that I can dig up, that matches pretty good. Does it work with animals? I gotta say, yeah, because growing up on a farm, I've learned that all different types of animals. We had sheep, goats, chickens, horses, cows, everything. I think that yes, all animals have distinct personalities, and why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it be the same for them as it is for us? Either way, that's a pretty famous horse. You got a statue. I mean, how many horses have a statue? I don't know. That one's got one. He's the first horse to win the Grand Slam of thoroughbred racing. He's got some, they call it fire in your ass when you're running. When you're running that fast, he's got fire, and he's running. He's got fire and air. He's running. Sinclair Lewis, pretty famous guy. I try to stick with, the most famous guy. He was the first writer from the Americas to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature. That's a good achievement. He was born on February 7th. He is known for his strong characterizations of modern working women. So this is an artist who intuits his time, and he put it in literature, and he nailed it, and everybody took notice. So he's one of the most famous writers from the Americas, born February 7th, and his book, Free Air, is about a woman who, in the early 20s, so, just when everybody's getting comfortable with, okay, we got cars, we can go zipping around, and she goes zipping up to the Pacific Northwest and gives up her snobbish estate. So he's kind of maybe he's got a little socialist in him, but either way, that's the book, that's the cover, that's the dude, that's his birthday. That's what we got. I have no idea why there's a blank slide here. I tried to get rid of it. It won't. I think it has something to do with the next slide. This is the most famous bus in the United States. I don't think there's another bus that actually has a name. I don't know, but one bus, if you asked most people, certainly most people above, probably above the age of 40, do you know any buses with a name? Like there's famous buses with a name. I don't know if there might be, Vietnam era. This was the 60s and 70s counterculture movement. The name of the bus is Further. That's the name of the bus, and there it is on the front. And these were, some guys driving around the country doing acid, having a lot of fun. There's probably pot smoke flying out the windows. Definitely, probably some beer cans. I don't know, whiskey bottles. Pretty much everything. But these guys were having a good time. They were free. They were enjoying their freedom, and they were a major part of the counterculture movement that was discussing the use of LSD and these different drugs and ideas of freedom and the exploration of human consciousness actually in real time. I don't know. Most people that know about these guys hold them in pretty high regard. I think that it's very compelling that there's a bus that has a name. So I was interested in that. The driver of the bus is born February 8th, Wagon, Decan. And we're going to start looking because some of these examples coming up now we're all going to have call those? It's when you get your picture taken down at the police station. There is an element of this Decan that sits. She's got a lame leg, remember? It's not necessarily literally true, though it might be. I don't know. I didn't find any examples of that, but these are people that sit down. Sometimes I sits and thinks, other times I sits and drinks, but mostly I just sits. I found that to be pretty consistent. But there's his mugshot. That's Neil Cassidy. Oh, the second most famous bus. But see, this bus doesn't have a name. We're not going to name the bus. This is the most famous person ever associated with a bus. Any bus, I think. Pretty sure she's the most famous person ever associated with a bus. And where to sit on it. That's the other thing. So we've got sitting on a bus and the most famous person associated with those two things. There's a lot of people that sit on a bus, millions every day, but this woman is the most famous person who ever sat on a bus. That's pretty compelling. She also started a movement, or injected a lot of energy into a movement. Just like the counterculture, those guys didn't start it, but this is much more. Now we're up to a whole nother level. We're talking about equality here. This is a major sign that Wagon Decan is in your culture and is approaching maturity, because this kind of crap is not going to fly by the end of Wagon Decan. And I got to sit where? For what? I got to sit in the back because of what? Really? You see what I'm saying? This isn't grade school. We got to get moving forward here, right? This isn't, what are we talking about here? So, pretty painful to even think that happened in our culture, but there it is. 1955, that's not that long ago. 65 years ago, this was the first person. So Rosa Parks is the most famous person that ever sat on a bus. She is the first lady of civil rights. She is an icon of our era. She's an icon of U.S. history. Her memorial has her. I really like that sculpture. I think it's wonderful. I think that's a very good job. It really distinguishes not just the person, but the posture, and it puts it in stone. And I think I really like the way the stone is a big part of it. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And there's the back of the chair. You can see the back of the chair in the Decan. You can see the back of the chair of her. This is an avatar of this Decan. She did it with a single act. She followed through. She committed an act of bravery in the face of stupidity. And she changed our entire, or helped to change. Certainly gave it an injection, and not of, it wasn't a downer, it was a major injection. But then it still happens. So here we have Sandra Bland. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Texas. Texas is, man, there's some weirdness going on down in Texas. I've traveled through Texas when I was younger. I did not find it to be a real pleasurable experience, even though I was white. I was from the north, but even being a northerner, you can run into trouble in Texas. You really want to get that accent down if you're going to do much traveling into areas you're not familiar with. I can't imagine what it's like for someone like Sandra Bland to be pulled over for a turning signal. And this, all this for a turning signal? Doesn't look like, it's like some people aren't getting it. And this was, this is 60 years later after Rosa Parks. It's amazing to me, but there she is. She was born in Wagon, Decan. I think you should pay very close attention to her. Listen to her. She's got the right thing going on. Bob Marley, that's a leader. He's got the movement of the people. Love the album cover. Born in Wagon, Decan. He did it with music. So I like how we have all these examples of how people did it. Now, you have FDR, who sat in the big seat, right? That's the biggest seat. You have some of those ladies who sat in the big seats. And you have Rosa Parks, who sat just in one seat on the bus, right? Just one chair on the bus. And you have Bob Marley did it with music. Sinclair Lewis did it with writing, but Bob Marley did it with music. I think that's very commendable. He's an icon of our age. He's definitely an avatar, and I think that this shows that from the beginning, from the semi-failed or very difficult leadership of Empress Matilda to Park Gun High, I think you find that there's this space in between, and the Industrial Revolution is winding down, and it's all moving into the air, which is Vulture. So that's how I see it. That's how I think it's always been identified. The stars, if they're calibrated properly, I think would say the same thing, but I think people are using antiquated calibration systems for the stars. I mean, might be close, but no cigar. It's not happening. We're not just moving into water Decan, that's for sure. So, just so people know, there are books in the Bible that use these decans as the structure of the text. Now, there's mostly 2 cycles that are used in the structure of these old texts, but some of them are specific about the decans. In Numbers is 36 chapters. Wagon is the last chapter, and it's the issue of female inheritance, very close to Matilda's story. The number 36 chapter of Numbers is Wagon Decan. There's no question about it. I've studied it. I've looked at it. I didn't want to believe it for years. I just keep looking at it. I get more examples. Like, no, that's definitely it. That's definitely it. I mean, there's no question. The correlate to Genesis is number 34. Genesis follows the decans all the way around once, and then up to number 14 to complete 50 chapters. Number 34 is the chapter in Genesis for Wagon Decan, and it is the story of the troubles of getting Dinah married off. Now, Dinah is the only sister of all the boys, and that's exactly what Wagon Decan is. It's the sister of the all-boys club in the warning or danger decans, and that's how I think the danger and the warning is as I look at all the examples, I think the danger and the warning is that these people are going to set wrongs right. They're going to do things that are going to upset some people. Now, those, I call them change agents sometimes. I call them change agents. Like, their job in society is for correction. And Industrial Revolution obviously comes along with Wagon. There's no question. We've been through an Industrial Revolution. Doesn't match any other time frame. Doesn't match anything in Pisces. There's nothing in Pisces about an Industrial Revolution. But right there in the middle of Aquarius is flat out Industrial Revolution, and it was led by a lot of wagons. So that's my case. Have a good day.